Okay, thanks. Yeah, I'm from Infoware, and I'm the managing director, and I want to show you a bit about how we use OpenStreetMap in a project in Bangalore, which I think was and is still quite interesting. Well, first of all, I'll give you a quick introduction of what Infoware is and who we are and what we do. We're located in Bonn, in Germany. We've been around for quite a while, since 1984. We're 30 employees roundabout. 95% of those are software developers, so we're really a geek kind of driven company. We really like software. And what we do is we make software tools that have everything to do with digital maps. Obviously, I wouldn't be here otherwise, I guess. Which they are for mapping, routing, navigation, and traffic data. What we do is we have, let me see if this works, yeah. We develop some products, software development kits, for those purposes, and obviously if our customers ask us to do some projects for them, we don't say no, unless they wouldn't pay us. Some examples for what we do is what is probably best known, at least in Germany, are these websites here for German Yellow Pages, Telefonbuch, das Örtliche, where we do all the mapping and routing based on our own technologies. We develop all of that ourselves. And recently we've also done that on the smartphones, iPhone, Android, BlackBerry, all of those platforms, plus navigation. So actual GPS, turn-by-turn navigation. Then we also deal with traffic information, which is like a natural extension of planning a route or doing navigation, because if you do it on digital maps, that's fine, but you want your customer to, reflect the actual driving realities a little bit. So what do we do with OpenStreetMap? And first of all, why do we work with OpenStreetMap at all? The main reason is, or first of all, we're really extremely happy that OpenStreetMap exists, because we've been working with TeleAtlas and Navtec, and now they're called TomTom and Nokia for many years. And I would say that it's not always a pleasure. No, the main point about OpenStreetMap is that you can really do what makes sense, and you don't have to read 60 pages of license agreements all the time and have somebody in your back, some legal department tearing you apart because you did something wrong, or your customer asks you, can you build such and such an application for us, and you have to say, technically, yes, no problem. Legally, licensing-wise, I'd have to check. I can't tell you right now. And the worst part comes when your customer asks you, how much does it cost? And you have to say, I don't know. Because you have to ask back to those guys, the TeleAtlas guys, and it's not a pleasure. So OpenStreetMap is really like a big boost for us. We're investing a lot of energy in OpenStreetMap. Because we're just free to do whatever is technically feasible and which makes sense to our customers. That's the main advantage. So so far we've launched some rather large applications for Axel Springer, a German publishing house, especially for Hamburger Abendblatt, Berliner Morgenpost, Berlin 1. That's on the web, and that's also on the smartphone platforms. Then we're working hard to launch our navigation products, also based on OSM. There, the backside, the not so good part about OSM is we're still struggling with geocoding issues. How can you find the location? That's still kind of an open issue. If you have any hints, then I'd be grateful for that. Well, we're also doing this, what I'm going to show you now, logistics planning. So we go to India. We've been working for a large German logistics company for quite a while, and we've built some planning tools for them, for Berlin and for Cologne, and you have areas where you can take OpenStreetMap, Teleatlas, Navteq, whatever, and you have 99% reality in that map data. In India, that looks a little bit different. Their cities are growing at a tremendous rate. There is not really any good map data available, and still we had to solve that issue somehow. So first of all, I'm going to show you a bit what the objective is and what they're doing. So that's a picture from their depot at the airport, and in the morning a plane comes in and it delivers like around about 1,000 packages today, and they're in those air freight containers like that. So they're being hauled in from the airplane. That's the landing strip back there, and they're hauling that in, breaking up the packages, and then they're starting a sorting process. They're trying to find out which package goes where and on which truck it should belong. And that's a rather creative process, what they're doing there. They have loads of people, and they take a package and they look at it, and really I found it really hard to believe that that's really the way it is. It says on the packages, this package goes to IBM in Bangalore. Now, Bangalore is a city of like 10 million people or so. Find out where IBM in Bangalore is, and it doesn't say anything else. And also the interfaces that they have, the computer, the software interfaces, the data that they get from that, don't ask me why, but it doesn't give them any more information. So that's what they have to do, they're planning on. So these guys, they look at the packages and they say, oh, that package with the red ribbons, I know the company that always sends them off like that. Those packages with the red ribbons, they always go to IBM in the main street or something like that. So they do some kind of sorting process, which kind of just still barely works right now. And then in the end, they build those piles of packages, and each pile is meant for one truck. And one truck is one tour that goes around, right? So they try to sort that to the best of their knowledge, which is sometimes good and sometimes not. In the end, all of that is being loaded into the trucks. And between the first picture that I showed you with the blue container and that one is about like 3 hours or so, sometimes 4, so it really takes a long time. And in India, too, the working day is only 8 hours long or 10 at maximum. So they're losing a lot of time. All that sorting process costs a lot of money and time, especially. And then they drive off. They drive off with their trucks. They have a list of all the packages that they have in their vehicle. And while they're driving, they have about 1 hour's time to get from the airport to the delivery area in the city center. The driver or the delivery guy, they have 3 people on the truck. One just drives. This guy is called the loader, so he's the one who's carrying the packages, and he's a delivery specialist. And the guy in the sweater there, he has this paper list in front of him while they're on their way from the airport to the city, and he tries to figure out the stop sequence, what makes sense. And then they go to that location where he thinks the customer is, and very often what starts is they have to search for the customer. They're driving up and down the road and then getting out and running back and forth, and if everything else fails, they take out their mobile phone and try to call the customer to figure out where it is. So geocoding is a major issue. It's a real problem in India. But they succeed. You know, at the end of the day, all packages are delivered. But I think the issue is it really still barely works, and they're growing at a rate of 10% per year. So if all the people of Bangalore from one day to the other start ordering at Amazon, it will not work anymore. If the workloads explode, then it won't work. So the system that we're building together with 2 other companies is, it looks like a little bit like this. It's a bit confusing maybe. But what happens here is we get those shipment data, we try to geocode that, and as I said, there is no address data in India. There's not just no good address data, there's really virtually no address data. You cannot find out which streets exist and what the official street name of a street is. So, big issue. So you cannot geocode everything automatically. So there is another thank you, interface that does manual geocoding, where those guys that look at the packages, they have a screen and then they can click on a map and say that's where it belongs. And once everything is geocoded, it goes into our software, which is called the Map Suite, which is like a mapping framework that has mapping functionalities, geocoding, route planning, navigation, and distance matrix calculation. So all those 1,000 geocodes go into this routing engine, and that figures out all the distances between the locations and the drive times. And the drive times are important because that is what is being used here by the sequencer. The sequencer, then, that's somebody else's software. They do the stop planning, they assign the packages to different vehicles, and then figure out the right stop sequence in which to do that. And in the end, then we do the navigation to take them from point A to point B. And we also consider traffic information while we do that. Now, our customer asked us, what are we going to do? Which map source are we going to use? And they're very prone to using what they know, namely TeleAtlas or TomTom and Navteq. And we kind of wanted to use OpenStreetMap, I admit that. So what then they also had another map source called MapMyIndia, which is an Indian company. And we said, well, basically our technology can work with all of those map sources. We're going to do a little investigation and make a recommendation. So what we did is we compared all of those map sources. You can see TeleAtlas, MapMyIndia, Navteq, OpenStreetMap, and on OpenStreetMap you will always see those little icons. That's the location of the customers, because we didn't want to make a scientific comparison of maps. We wanted to compare the maps at the location where the customers were. And then we also looked at Bing, Google, and Eicher, which is an Indian company. It's funny that it's called Eicher because it sounds so German. Maybe it was an Austrian company once, and they were bought by, I don't know. It's a big company. They also make trucks and maps. I don't know. Anyway, these obviously we couldn't really use because you cannot plan routes on those. You don't have the geometries. So we compared the coverage, and those are 5,000 customers in Bangalore. And we found that OpenStreetMap was not the best, but it was not the worst either, which I found was quite a good result. And you could see here TeleAtlas in some locations has no roads at all, where OpenStreetMap has quite a lot. And MapMyIndia was really quite good. Navteq is also quite good. You can see that repeating here. TeleAtlas is a little better, but overall TeleAtlas was really, really bad. Here you can see an example for OpenStreetMap not having very much data there, where MapMyIndia, both, and Navteq also, they have much more details. But then again, if you look at the location of the customers, they're all very close to the roads that are there. So what more do you need? And also we argued that it's growing at a rapid rate, and if something is missing, we can edit it ourselves, which we haven't done so far, but the possibility is there. So we looked at that and we said, okay, coverage seems to be okay. What about the capability to do route planning on OSM data? So we analyzed, is the network complete in Bangalore? Are there holes in the network? And we did this analysis with our routing engine, and it tries to go to every single street in Bangalore, and then you find that there were some gaps that you can. There were roads there, but you could not access them from outside. And we also looked at what's the tool again? Here, colleagues from Austria, the Keep Right. Yeah, we also used that to analyze that, and then we fixed that ourselves. And so routing network was okay; it worked. Then we also did some route calculations. From here, stop 9 to stop 10, and we calculated the route. That's the pink line, and we were also there, and we recorded how they actually drove. We wanted to compare. That's another issue for us with OpenStreetMap: turn restrictions. Are the routes correct or not? Are we calculating complete nonsense? Maybe, but that turned out to be quite okay too. Also, because in India, turn restrictions, it's just you drive where there is room. So it's, they're not, I think we looked at the statistics, and there are around about 500 turn restrictions in India in total in the OpenStreetMap data. So there's virtually nothing, but maybe that's just, there's no need for that. I don't know. So we looked at that, and we did quite a bit of a thorough investigation. Most of the time, it was good, or it was equivalent at least. Sometimes we found that there were missing road segments, and we were very open with that to our customer. And in the end, we compiled a list and said, okay. How is TeleAtlas, Navteq, MapMyIndia, and OSM, how is it suitable for mapping? They're all good. How are they suitable for routing? Well, these three are better. How are they suitable for geocoding? There is some geocoding capabilities in those map providers, but there's not really any in OpenStreetMap. But we had a different solution for that anyway. Then, interesting issue, physically available for development in Germany. No, because NMP stands for National Map Policy. The Indian government does not allow map data to physically leave the country. So how are you going to develop a software solution like that? Well, OpenStreetMap, maybe it's not allowed, but happens anyway. Is there a license agreement necessary? That's the wrong way. Yes, 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 no. And then you talk to a big company and say, okay, you want to use those? Fine. Yeah, just tell your legal department to close a licensing agreement. And when you want a solution up and running, 3 months from now? Well, maybe no, not an option. And then free of charge, that was not the most important issue, because if they really want to use something, they're willing to pay obscene amounts of money for it. But it helps if you don't have to pay money. So that was really, these two were the main arguments, and then they said, okay, based on your analysis, go ahead and use OpenStreetMap. That's what we're doing now. It's working fine. It's not long before it goes, yes, before it will go into a pilot phase, and we're going to see how it works then. But so far, it looks really good. I've been in Bangalore, and I've met the OpenStreetMap community there in Bangalore. So this way, all the way to Bangalore, thank you for your work there. Otherwise, we couldn't have done it. And I think that brings me to the end of my presentation. great. And now everybody's happy with OpenStreetMap in Bangalore. And I can really recommend going to Bangalore because it's a beautiful city, full of IT, know-how, great people, very innovative. And that was my quick presentation about Bangalore and OpenStreetMap. Thank you.
Do we have questions?
Would there basically be the possibility of a data backflow from your customer who operates his delivery trucks and probably traces the route via GPS to the local OSM community?
Yes. During the pilot phase, certainly. It is. I mentioned that. I said, would you be willing to do that? And all the edits that we do, please be aware, they go back into the community. Is that okay with you? And then they said, well, that would mean that other logistics companies would also benefit from our work. But then again, yes, I think that would be okay. But that is just a snapshot of today's situation. You know, in those huge corporations, there's better don't mention it. You know, sometimes it's better not to ask that question, and sometimes they just do it.
Other questions?
Google Mapmaker has been quite active in India in particular. Do you think that's because Google sees the same problem that you've seen, that there's a lot of missing data, a lot of potential of their data? And also, do you think Google's going to get sued by the Indian government for having Google Mapmaker? I mean, for Google Mapmaker, which is sort of, is it Google Mapmaker? The one where Google basically have mapping parties, kind of like we do in OpenStreetMap. But I think those basically kicked off in India, if I remember correctly. And they were very active with trying to build up an Indian community of volunteer mappers contributing to Google. And then, of course, Google builds their map on that basis. Obviously, Google sees that there is a real need to do that because the quality of data is quite poor, and obviously we see there's considerable commercial value in that. I suppose we need to do the same for OpenStreetMap, really. It's more of a thought than a question. And also, it would be interesting to see if Google gets tripped up by that Indian government's requirement for keeping the data within India.
Sorry, I didn't get the point of your question. Yeah, okay.
How did you solve the geocoding problem? Because you said you had found a solution, but haven't really told us what the solution has been.
That's another company that takes care of that. What we do is we do some really rough geocoding. So there are there was some data imported about zip codes, for instance, postal codes, and then we also use landmarks because many Indian addresses are, well, for instance, the address of my hotel was the so-and-so hotel. It had a zip code, and then it says near something, near fire station or so. And then we have a list of those landmarks, our POIs, and we also imported some geometries from OpenStreetMap. For instance, SAP there's an SAP lab in Bangalore. It has a geometry, it's a polygon. We extracted all of that data from OpenStreetMap, and then this other company, they do searches and matches. When a parcel is received and it says something about SAP, and then they try to match that to that geometry that we have there. And also, so that way we try to do a rough geocoding to say basically this parcel goes to the northeast of Bangalore, for instance. And also, when they deliver something, they also capture a geocode. So that is later being used and in reference to the address data, and then that way we're trying to build an address database step by step. But it's not geocoding in the sense that we do it here with a hierarchical address data structure, and it's basically still an unsolved issue.
Okay. One quick question? No. Okay. So thank you, Thomas.